like certain college profile to get into a given school. But I think it all depends on like the person and your situation and all of that. Personally, in high school, I did a lot of science classes. Like my school allowed me to drop like Spanish and language and English to like take more science classes. So each year I would take like 2 or 3 like AP Bio, AP Chem type classes. So that was like my main, I guess, class focus. But like that type of thing also just depends on your school and what your school offers. So I just took what I liked in high school. And then in terms of like clubs, I started my own few clubs. I did like Science Bowl, Science Olympiad type things, and then like DECA, if you guys have heard of that, which is like a business club. I did Quiz Bowl, so a lot of different academic clubs, and then I did like my school's Indian dance team, so kind of just all over the place. But I guess also my advice with joining clubs is just to do what you really like, and then what you can like get leadership in later on. Like, so if you can become president or co-president of that club, those are like the types of things I would encourage you guys to join. But yeah, and I think like mostly what helped with me getting into Stanford and like other schools was that I did a lot of research. So I like worked at different labs, and I would present that work around like at science fairs in the area, and then at other like national and international events. So I think like that's probably the one thing on my application that made me stand out. But I think like on a case-to-case basis, it just depends. Like if you're interested in history and you want to major in that in college, then like find a way to make yourself stand out in that field. So I don't think there's like one profile that can get you into any given school. I think it just depends. But for me, that's kind of what I think. I don't even know what might have helped me get in.
Yeah, and going off of that, like with the amount of extracurriculars you took, how were you able to manage your time in high school?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all just comes down to getting in like a flow of things. So obviously right now I'm like taking a gap year. I don't have as much on my plate. So it's really interesting to see like the contrast, like my daily schedule. Like now I almost am like confused as to how I was able to do so much back then. But I think it's about making like finding time to do things you like. So if all your clubs don't seem like work to you, if your classes don't seem like work to you, then I don't think it's that difficult to like fit everything in a day. So like all the clubs like were like my closest friends, so I didn't really feel like it was like too much time out of my day to devote to like extracurriculars and things like that. And I also had like a pretty like solid routine. It wasn't like I stuck to a schedule every day, but like with my research I would go every day from like after school to like 5 p.m. type thing. So like having that like daily cycle makes it easier to kind of balance things, or that's what I've kind of found. And now with like less things on my plate, I guess with like COVID and not being enrolled in college, obviously, it's kind of like interesting to see like how when I have less things, like my productivity is literally the same as when I like literally had so many other things going on.
Yeah, and of course you're taking a gap year right now, and I know someone just in the chat. Do you have to put in your application that you were taking a gap year? If so, how?
Yeah, so my situation with gap year is really like because of COVID. So Stanford specifically is one of the most lenient schools with gap years this year. 450 students from the class of 2024 took gap years, which is literally like 1/4 of the class. And they like with gap years, you can indicate that you're interested in taking one when you apply, but I don't think you necessarily have to, because you can also like once you get into the school say like I would like to take a gap year, and then they can approve your request. So there's different ways to go about it, but for me specifically, I decided to take a gap year in like August, like very late. Like usually you're supposed to decide like May or like the first day of June. But I decided because Stanford went completely online and I wanted like the full college experience to like be in person and meet friends and teachers, that I wanted to wait till next year. So they like opened up the gap year like request form again for literally 2 days. So I had 2 days to decide, and I was like, I'm just gonna take it. So that's kind of how my gap year process went. And then after that, I kind of found opportunities or things to fill my gap year. Usually in a standard, like normal circumstance, it would be like you have this whole like year-long thing that you want to pursue. And then you can send that to whatever college you're going to. And then they approve your gap year and they keep your, like they hold your place in the next year's class. So you can indicate that you want to do that before, and you can indicate that after you get in, but usually you have to give like a whole like essay on like what you're going to do in the year, so you're not just wasting it. Because of COVID, they were so much more lenient because they know kids don't want to just sit at home and take online classes. So they kind of just let a lot of kids take them without a like significant, like a solid plan developed.
Yeah, and how are you spending your gap year?
Yeah, so I've been doing research remotely for a lot of different labs. I'm like writing papers for different hospitals, and then next week I'm moving to Boston to work for a pharmaceutical company for the year. So I'm just like, I have an apartment there. I'm gonna live there and work at the company.
Okay, and now that you mentioned research, how are you able to find these research opportunities both in high school and during your gap year?
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of finding research, it's all a matter of just reaching out to like professors or like companies in your area. So I live in like Eastern Pennsylvania where there's like a lot of different like colleges and things going on. So I remember in like eighth grade, I emailed like 30, 40 professors asking if I could work in their lab. And then I only got like a positive response from two. And then I met with two of them in person, and I ended up working at one of their labs. So that's kind of like how it went for me. And even with like me finding these internships, it's all about just reaching out. Because I remember like I took the gap year and I sent like 50 emails the next day of like, hi, I'm interested in working for the year for whatever. So usually it like people are very willing to let you work in their lab, let you intern with them if you're just like free help. Honestly, like if you're like, I'm willing to learn whatever, do whatever, once you get your foot in the door, then you can start doing your own research and things like that. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of reaching out because that's usually what works for me. And then one experience after the next, like, can kind of help you build up your resume so you have experience to kind of advertise yourself to be like, oh, I've done this in the past and I think I can help you with this. Yeah, but and if you're interested in a professor's research specifically, like you can go on Google Scholar or go on their lab website and read all their papers, so you seem kind of like knowledgeable about what they're working on. Because if you kind of reach out to them and ask to work in their lab and you have no idea what they're doing, they're probably not gonna kind of want you there. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know you're next year when you go back to Stanford, you're going to be majoring in biomechanical engineering. So how did you discover your love for biomechanical engineering, and like what kind of job do you want to have or pursue in the future?
Yeah, I mean, college majors like that you're really likely to change. Like you'll take a class in college and totally change like what you want to do. So obviously like that's not super set in stone, but personally, I really like well, most of my research has been in biology, like cell biology, molecular biology, or genetics type stuff. So I guess that's like where I have most of my like science experience. But personally, I found like I really like engineering and like the hands-on type of building things versus like pure chemistry or pure biology where it's more like theoretical almost and you're just talking about like the theories and evolution of biology and things like that. So that's why I like mechanical engineering too, and Stanford's one of the only schools that has like biomechanical combined, um, which is why I've like applied as it, but you can change it like at any point. So who knows, it might change, but that's kind of why I picked that. And then in terms of like future stuff, like where I'm trying to go with this, I guess, I'm interested in getting like an MD PhD. So that's kind of like going to med school, but also having a research background so I can do like clinical research in the future.
Well, that's really amazing. And I know that you started a nonprofit, I believe. So, someone asked, what led you to start a nonprofit, and what struggles did you face along the way?
Yeah, so I started this nonprofit called Synapse Global Science Connections. So essentially, like what I did with my team was that we developed hands-on curriculum and like gained funding for these science enrichment programs in different countries. So personally, I know that like in the United States, our education is obviously far better. Like we have labs and more like resources than say like other schools in other areas. So we kind of developed this absolutely free program for like really young elementary to middle school age kids for them to get exposed to engineering and that like hands-on aspect of science. Because I know like other areas teach STEM with more like a very rigid like textbook focus, but not really having that like experimental like being able to play around with things like aspect of science can really like deter kids from pursuing it in the future. So that's kind of what we did. We developed curriculum, and we kind of sent funding over so that we could launch these free programs in 8 different countries.
And someone just asked, how did you find these connections in different countries?
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting that you ask, because they were all like personal friends that I've made through like science fairs and science conferences. So I kind of launched the initial program in my freshman or sophomore year of high school. And simultaneously, I was doing my own research with that. So sophomore year, I had like won all these science competitions. So then junior year, I got to like present my research in different places, mostly in Europe. But at those conferences, there would be like representatives from every country kind of presenting their research. So I'd make like all these friends from like wherever it be, like Nicaragua to like Nigeria. So like I would have all these connections. And then having those friends in different areas who were also like researchers interested in STEM, that's kind of how I spread synapse.
Yeah, and um, I believe someone also asked when you started doing your science fair, so I assume it's sophomore year.
Yeah, I'd actually been doing science fair since like 7th grade, honestly. Like my more hardcore research was probably like in 9th, 10th grade, and then like after that, obviously. But yeah, no, I think you can start in science fair as soon as middle school. And the projects don't have to be crazy. Like my first project was like lima beans in my kitchen. So I don't think you have to like go full out, like work in a lab and do like nuclear reactor stuff like your first time. So yeah, I started in 7th grade, but I mean, there's probably been opportunities earlier than that for like elementary school kids and things. So yeah, I think, but like my better research, like my more like lab focused stuff, started in like 8th, 9th grade, and then 10th grade was like a continue, like the second year of my research that like was really solid, that helped me kind of win stuff to present my research other places.
Yeah, and did you do research in your freshman year of high school? Like, what year of high school did you do research in?
Every year. Like once I started, I didn't really stop. But I mean, I started actually like end of 8th grade, honestly. Like that might be too like honestly like that might be too early for people. Like just enjoy middle school, honestly. But after that, I kind of kept working in that lab throughout high school. And once I got into one lab, um, I like was able to introduce myself to other professors working in the same department. So then like that kind of helps you get like connections to other labs as well.
Yeah, and did you end up partaking in any research programs? And if so, is there any particular program you want to suggest?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do too many of like the, I don't know, like standard research programs, because they are honestly really competitive to get into. One that I did was called RSI, the Research Science Institute, and you can apply to that like your junior year of high school, and you do it like the juniors, your summer from junior to senior year. And that was like one of the best experiences I've had. I got to work at a lab in Boston and like live there for the whole summer. And I'm still really close with all the people I met there. So that's one that I've done that I had a really good experience with. But I know there's a lot just for juniors to seniors, especially. Because I remember like when I was in that like time period, I applied to so many. And then like a lot of them would overlap. So if you got into one, you couldn't do the other type of thing. But yeah, I think that like during that time period of high school, there's a lot of different opportunities, and they change every year too. So like stuff I've applied to, and I'm trying to help like other kids apply to, is doesn't even exist anymore, and like new things will start every year. So you just kind of have to be on the lookout. But personally, RSI was the only program that I did.
Yeah, and um, what do you recommend learning like before you partake in these research internships or opportunities with professors? Because I know, like, I mean, did you learn biology beforehand or anything like that to prepare yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I necessarily would like sit down and read textbooks before I would go to the lab. Like, I think I had like a generally good sense of like fundamental biology and chemistry in freshman year. Like, I don't even know why. Like, I used to study that stuff, I guess, in middle school. but that definitely helped. I think like just having a basic understanding. If you're gonna work in like a bio lab, like if you want to work in a physics lab, then you need like a totally different set of like basic skills. But like if you just have like a general sense of the field you're working in, it will always help. And then I think across the board, like having a good programming background, like whether it be in MATLAB, Python, JavaScript, like it just helps in general. I know especially in biology and because of COVID, like all research is remote and it's like computational genetics type stuff. So all of that is just done like from your computer sitting at home. It's like data mining and going through like different analyses of like whatever like research. So having like a good programming background will help you across the board, I think. But I don't think you need to like sit down and like study a full field intensely. A lot of it's just like learning on the go, depending on what lab you're working at.
Yeah, and you mentioned RSI, and someone mentioned that it's a very competitive program. So do you have any tips on maybe what to write for the prompts or how to just get in?
Yeah, honestly, I have no idea. Like these types of things, like with college apps and like programs, like it just like if you like retry to apply, like every year they would pick like different kids, like even if you put the same kids through the like application, like just by chance and luck they pick different kids. So I think like my whole like advice to applying to programs, applying to colleges is apply to a lot that like cover, like don't apply to like 100 and spend your whole life applying, but the more you apply to, like the better chance you have of getting in, because a lot of it's just luck. I know the RSI application probably changed, but they really just ask like what your research interests are. So like having like a science fair background or participating in like the biology Olympiad, chemistry Olympiad, or any of those competitions can also help. But yeah, other than that, like I know personally it was just my science fair stuff that probably helped me get in. But I know for my other friends, they did really well on some of like the Olympiad tests, and other kids just did some research and were just interested and also still got in. So I think it just depends. In high school, like I wouldn't like do everything with the intent of trying to get into these programs, because a lot of it's still just chance, unfortunately.
Yeah, and are there any particular skills that are needed to go into like and get into these research labs and work with these professors?
Yeah, I don't think like there's like a requirement to do any of this type of stuff. Like I said, I think having programming experience or having lab experience in the past will always help you. Or like even just saying that you were able to take some high level science classes in high school can really help. And there's also even like math research going on too. So if, like just pure like lab bench work isn't really your thing, you can go to like math professors at colleges and try to work on projects with them, or CS professors and do like coding stuff. So there's opportunities across the board really if you just reach out to like professionals in your area. I don't think there's any like really like checkbox type experience required.
And I know that like you've done research throughout like your entire high school career, but is there any other way to be involved in science?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely always stuff going on, like probably in your area. It depends, like kind of what branch of science you're interested in. Like, if you're interested in like environmental stuff, like I know there's like a whole nature reserve in my area that's always accepting kids to like go like work with them and do their like field research projects. If you're interested in like medicine, like go shadow doctors. Like, I think it depends on kind of what area you're interested in, and then whatever that may be, you can kind of like pursue further, reach out to like professionals in your area. And even if you don't like want an internship, just having a phone call with someone who's like working in the field that you may be interested in can open so many doors to different opportunities. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, okay, and I'll pass the power of asking questions to Pari or Apoorva.
Hi. So a few questions that other people had is like, is there a certain type of research that you haven't done and would like to try?
Oh, that's a good question. I've done like a lot of just biology stuff. So if like doing like chemical engineering work like would really be interesting, I think, because there's just like that would just be like so different from what I've done in the past. So yeah, if I was in like a synthetic like chemical manufacturing lab, like that would be pretty cool. So I think that would be one area that I'd want to work in the future, just because it's so different from like just the like cell biology stuff I've done in the past.
And what does a typical day as a researcher look like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on like what lab like we're talking about when I worked there. Like I can talk about like my last summer where like I was full-time researching. I was doing like a genetics project at the Broad Institute in Boston. And yeah, like it was like a pretty relaxed environment, I'd say. Like I think research is like there's no like time schedule. It's about like how much time you want to devote to it. So I would like wake up, I guess, and around like 8, not too early, hang out with friends, and I would like go to the lab at 9, and then from like 9 to 12, like I was doing mostly computational biology stuff, so I wasn't like at the lab bench necessarily, but I would just I guess like do whatever like data processing in the morning, and then I know from like 1 to 2 p.m. there's always like lab meetings, or you would meet up with your PI or principal investigator at some point throughout the day, and then like from maybe like 3 to 5 again, finish up like whatever data processing, put together a presentation for the next day, and then like at night we would have to share like our findings from the day with people like from our program doing research at other labs. So yeah, like it's all like a kind of very, very like relaxed schedule, I'd say. Like when you're doing research on your own time, like you really get these like long-term deadlines, like, oh, finish this part of the project by the end of the week. So like you self-pace that. And then you have to kind of share your progress along the way, whether it be to people in your own lab or people to in other labs in your department, or your like not boss, but like the principal investigator that's in charge of you. So yeah, it's just a lot of like self-paced stuff, I'd say, that goes on throughout the day.
How did you reach out to professors when you were in 8th grade? Because that's a pretty young age for an internship.
Yeah, no, I did, which is why I got like literally denied from so many of them, I'd say. Like I don't recommend, but like honestly, it's like always worth a shot. Like from doing that, like it just like taught me a lot about like trial and error, like might as well just shoot your shot, like with a lot of things. So yeah, I don't think many 8th graders I know were doing research at that time, but like at the same time, like you don't need to be. Like you can just have fun in middle school and you'll still be fine. Like you don't need to do research your whole high school life. Like even 1 year, if you're interested in STEM, will help you like get into programs or get into college, or just get a good experience and understanding of what you want to do in the future. Like I don't think by any means, if research isn't your thing, you have to start whenever, or do it for however many years. Like I would just do it when you have time or if you're interested in it.
And how did you know you wanted to go in the STEM field, like all research and science?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would always liked math a lot. And then that kind of just like continued throughout middle school when all my friends were doing science fairs. Like I wanted to join too. So my first science fair project, like I'd mentioned, was like something really like low scale, like plants in my kitchen. And then kind of like once you build up from there, you can like work in labs, do as high level research as you want. But I think once you just have like a small like foot in the door type thing, like, oh my gosh, I'm making like growing plants in my kitchen and like measuring the height of them, and you get the whole experience, I think it kind of draws you in, definitely as like a 6th or 7th grader.
And what was your favorite part about doing research?
That's a good question too. I don't know. I think it was like um feeling after you like get something to work, because a lot of the time I think science looks really glamorous, like, oh, all these technologies work perfectly all the time, and like you can clone this and do all this crazy stuff, but half the time it usually doesn't work in the lab. Like it's like the 800 times that it doesn't work just to build up for the one time that it does. So I think it gets really frustrating at points, but it's all kind of worth it when like whatever data you're trying to find works out, whatever machine you were trying to build finally works. So like I guess I would really like, if you ask me like my favorite part of research, I'd say like that moment when like something works in your lab.
Are there certain skills that professors look for to get into research labs?
I don't think so. Like in my experience, not really. I think saying that I have a programming background like makes them want me more, because there's less like training required. Like they don't have to teach me how to use all their software. I kind of have a background in it. So I think like once again, that's like the best like universal piece of like skill, or like universal skill set that you could really have. And other than that, like just reading through their papers and saying that you have an interest in their work specifically makes professors a lot more likely to want you in their lab, I'd say.
What do you plan on doing with your MD or PhD?
Yeah, I'm really interested in the pharmaceutical industry, so doing research like to develop um, like therapeutics or just medication, like in general, would be my interest as of now, but obviously it could change. I really like business and entrepreneurship too, so like launching my own pharmaceutical startup would definitely be an interest of mine as well.
And previously you said that you did programming languages on your own, and which ones did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like the best like programmer coder out there. I know like what I need to know for my research. But like in general, I know Python, MATLAB, and like barely Java. But I only like and then I know like R for genetics research. But other than that, like I'm not some like coding whiz. Like I just know kind of the basics, which really help me in research a lot.
And other than your interests, like mostly all your things were related to STEM, like the activities you did. Were there any outside of STEM that you did?
Activities that I did outside of STEM.
Yes.
Yeah, I did like one business club, like I mentioned, called DECA. I did Quiz Bowl, which is just like an academic club altogether. Even though I did mostly like the science parts of Quiz Bowl. Um, what else? In my school, like most of the clubs were super like fluid. Like you didn't have to dedicate like too much time to them. So I'd always help out with like the international club. I would do like cultural clubs. Um, and then I played like field hockey for a while. And then I started my own radio show, which became like a side interest of mine, even though that did kind of like the radio show was about science, like all these things kind of gave me like a distraction from like hardcore research all day.
And do colleges understand the scoring system of Olympiads, or do you have to explain that on your application?
MIT does, which is like the only school that like on their application they had a whole box that was like if you've done any Olympiad, put the score here, and then in parentheses they were like if you've never done this or don't know what this means, ignore this box. So like that's the only school that's like knows because it's super techie school, but um yeah, that's the only I'm not gonna lie, like, that's the only school that's gonna ask or care. But if you do score well on the Olympiads, then you can say like on your application, like, oh, I'm a semifinalist for the US math Olympiad or USA Biology Olympiad. So by having a good score in that, it's definitely something you can put on your resume or activities or awards for normal schools, like on the common application. But the only school that explicitly will ask you what your scores on Olympiads are is MIT, out of those that I've applied to. Like I don't know if like some random school will ask too, but out of the schools I've applied to, that was the only school that I recall asking.
And you said that you applied in 8th grade, but then you got rejected many times. When was a time that, what grade did you start getting more requests for you to come in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any like probably never gonna be that good that people are gonna request me to come in, but like I think probably after sophomore year, like I had built up enough of a resume that like if I reached out to a lab person, they were probably more willing because they saw kind of like my past experience. I'd like written papers at that point, and then I had presented my research at different conferences. So that probably was the point at which I had enough experience to be able to apply to more labs per se. But I don't think like even like in high school, you're never gonna be like a super desirable candidate for a lab because you don't have like the undergraduate degree or like any actual college experience yet. So I think like until then, I'm never gonna be like the perfect like person to work in a lab. But yeah, I think for me, like at sophomore year, it was like a kind of a turning point because I'd written papers by then.
Does Science Olympiad build your interest in different topics, or does it help your college apps?
Yeah, I only did Science Olympiad for a short like period of time. And I think it depends. Like if you do your event for like the whole 4 years of high school, then you're probably not gonna get like too much experience in other fields. If you try out a lot of different events, then that'll definitely like open like open your horizons to other fields and maybe make you interested in something that you didn't think you were in the past. And if you win Science Olympiad, then it's obviously something you can put in your awards or activities. But the same goes for all schools, really. Like if you win, like it's something you can put in your resume, or something that you dedicate a lot of time to, you can put in your extracurriculars. So every school will care about that, not necessarily like just MIT or just a science school.
Do you have any tips for scholarships if you have ever won them?
Yeah, for scholarships, I think it's really hard to find like scholarships that you specifically apply to or like you meet the eligibility requirements for. Because for me, like a lot of them would be like directed at people in a certain financial bracket or a certain ethnicity, or your parents work for a certain company. So it's kind of hard to find ones that you specifically can apply for. So personally, like I would Google like scholarships for women in STEM or scholarships for Pennsylvania, or like different like things that would meet like my kind of like position or something that I would meet the requirements for. But I would always have like this ongoing list of scholarships to apply to with their due dates and everything. Because sometimes you'll like find one and then forget to apply to it because it's due like 6 months later. So I would just like have an ongoing list, and like if you come across something, if you come across an ad or a flyer, add it to the list. And then in terms of searching, like try to make your search really specific to your like geographic location, your academic interest, because sometimes like you won't meet the requirements for a lot of them that are directed at a certain kind of group of kids.
And one person who's interested in medical biotechnology said that they're interested in going to Stanford, but they have never done anything outstanding or awesome. So how can they make themselves stand out?
Yeah, I think like just to make yourself stand out, you just have to do what you really like very in depth, like as much as you can. So like pursue like a hour a day to like one thing that you're just super interested in, whether it be like starting a program, running a club, like just taking something to like the absolute fullest that you can. Even if it's a school club, like if you can do something like super radical with it, like get it in the newspaper, just do something like incredible with just one thing, like that'll make you stand out, whatever it may be. Like if it's a club you like, if it's something outside of school. Um, I the one thing I'd say is like just being good in school, just getting a perfect SAT score, just being like smart in all your classes, getting a 4.0 GPA. Although it may take like a lot of time and a lot of effort, it doesn't necessarily make you stand out. So as long as it's not just something solely like school or grade related, if you just like take one of your interests to the fullest, it'll definitely like just leave a mark on your resume and make colleges like think twice before like passing over your application.
When you sent out the emails to professors, were they pretty generic or were they towards in detail to their lab?
Yeah, it was definitely super in depth for their lab. Like it's not something you can really copy and paste and send to 40 professors. Like you have to really sit down, print out their papers and go through it to understand their research better. Because when you do reach out to them, if they know that you're kind of aware of the research going on in their lab, they're much more likely to kind of want you in their research space. So I would like go through all their research on like PubMed or Google Scholar, and figure out how I wanted to even contribute to the work that was going on. Because usually professors will have like 3 or 4 different projects. So if you reach out to them with like an intention of joining one group specifically, then it also kind of helps them like get a sense of what your research interests are to begin with.
And it says, one of the questions asked, how did you get the opportunity to speak at a TED Talk?
Yeah, I was reached out by one of the TEDx coordinators when I was presenting at a science fair. So I just had to like they contacted me and gave me the opportunity to like apply for like what I wanted to talk about. And then I was able to kind of like give my perspective on being like a youth in science and why I think people should be more open to having like younger kids working in high level like labs and in just more exposed to STEM in general. So I gave that talk in the like really beginning of sophomore year, end of freshman year of high school for me. And then after that was when also my Synapse kind of like nonprofit really took off as well. because those like two missions really aligned for me. Like one was talking about like how we should involve more kids in STEM, and the other one was actually going out and doing it in the real world and creating these programs to expose younger kids to science earlier. So it was just very like they both really kind of follow the same, I guess, like initiative. And that's like another thing with college applications. Like if you have like one initiative that you help in as many ways as you can, whether it be through clubs in high school or starting your own programs outside of school, like that also just shows that you have like a lot of drive and motivation in one area, I'd say.
Like all throughout your 4 high school years, how did you get so many opportunities, research things, TED Talks, and your nonprofit?
I'm not sure. Just say like one kind of builds to the next. Like I would apply for as many things that I was interested in all the time. I would always be on the lookout for opportunities because honestly, like I did like a lot of the research, and like TEDx was such a great experience for me. So everything I'd say like didn't really feel like work. Like when I would do it would all just be kind of fun. I would get to know the people and each thing really well. So yeah, I think like one thing really leads to the next. Like once you have experience, it kind of helps you get the next opportunity, and then the next, and so on. So it kind of just builds from there, I'd say.
And during this pandemic, what do you think high schoolers should do instead of their labs? Because everything's virtual now.
Yeah, and I think that makes it even easier, honestly, to get a professor on board because it takes less time and money and resources to bring you into their lab. So being willing to do like remote research, like computational biology stuff, CS work, you can even do like physics research totally remotely. So I think it makes it even easier, honestly, to get your foot in the door with labs because you can start doing stuff remotely, and hopefully once COVID is over, they'll let you work in their lab in person after they've seen like how dedicated you are to like meet with them once a week and like do some data science projects for them online.
And is there anything that you regretted or thought that you could have done instead in high school with STEM and research?
Yeah, I don't think I have any like major regrets in high school. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. Like nothing really traumatizing really comes to mind that I've regretted too bad. But I guess like in general, reflecting on it, I think like in the beginning of high school, especially, like you can take time to just relax more and just experience like high school with your friends more, because I didn't really like realize the value of that until like junior senior year, where I had more time to kind of like wind down and get to like just know people in my high school class better. So I'd say like don't get like too caught up in yourself, like where everything's about like applying to college so early. Like at some points, like just like relaxing and enjoying high school is like just as useful, I'd say.
How did your parents have an influence on your choice of STEM?
Yeah, I mean, my parents are both like in the STEM field, but I don't think they've ever really like pressured me to like go into it as well. I think like just when you're a kid and you have that influence around you in the household, like that's probably how I had like some kind of like basic understanding of bio and chem like as of 8th grade, 9th grade before I even really took the classes in high school. Um, so I'd say like it kind of helped me have like a general background, but I don't think your parents can really push you to like a field or not like a field. Like that's a decision you have to make based on the experiences like you go through in middle and high school.
And do you have public speaking tips that you had used during your TED?
Yeah, I don't that's interesting. Yeah, I don't think I have like necessarily tips. I think with public speaking, I've just gotten better over the years. Like when I rewatch my TED talk, like that for me was 4 or 5 years ago at this, no, 4 years ago at this point. So it's kind of like really cringy for me to like go back and watch like my literal like 13-year-old self like prance across a stage. Like, so I think I've like grown a lot since then, hopefully. But I think you just get better with time. Like after TED, I gave another like TED talk recently about like college and COVID, that type of thing. So once you have like one public speaking experience, like then I talked at like my city hall. I like gave I have this podcast on NPR. So like I would have these like progressive like speaking experiences that like helped me. So I think like just jumping into it, like doing debate at your school, which I did, like can always help. Like just being really like open and willing to like take up every opportunity, because things like public speaking you just kind of get better with. Like you can't like sit in your room and, I mean, you could sit in your room and talk to a wall, but like just being in front of an audience and being able to like engage people who are listening to you is just something that you learn with time and practice.
And but this year is everything's online, like I said before. So how can you practice your public speaking skills? Because saying stuff online is not the same thing as doing it in person.
Definitely, yeah, that is a good point. um I think like then you could kind of try to practice maybe like debate like with people in your family, like um kind of being able to engage like in heated discourse will always help you in public speaking. So even though like something like debate or even like giving a presentation maybe a little bit more intense and more like back and forth than just straight up giving a speech on a podium, it'll help you kind of be able to like articulate your thoughts better, so that when you do just have to give a straight up speech, or you do just have to like talk on an intercom or make an announcement type of thing, like you'll just have more confidence in your own like way of getting a message across. So I think like if you're at home right now, I would just try to find, like if you have a sibling, your parents, just try to find a way to like practice maybe like debating, or practice like maybe giving a presentation that you were supposed to give in school in person to your family.
And do you have tips for interviews?
Yeah, I think so before, I'd say like beginning of high school, when I used to have like a lot more interviews, like I would try to prepare for them more. And then like as I've kind of like gone through more interviews, I'd say like I've become more spontaneous in my responses. Before I used to really like try to think like, oh, what could they ask me and all that. I think it's easier if you're just like more relaxed and just more like go with the flow. Um, like if you're interviewing for a job or an internship or a position, like having a background like research in what you like what that job entails is obviously going to help you. But other than that, I'd say like just being like go with the flow, like just aware of like your own experience that makes you fit for the position is really all you can do. And like having that public speaking experience makes you more like personable and easier to interact with for the interviewer. So I think it's a combination of just having experience and also just being like being not like so uptight and rigid, just being like a very personable candidate for them will help.
Going to be an undergraduate at Stanford or a direct med?
Yeah, I'm just a like normal undergraduate student. Direct med programs, I'd say, like have really dwindled in the past like 4 or 5 years, because like it's like 6 or 7 years to like get a like medical degree, um, which can be a really like rush for some students. So I know there's like specific colleges that have that, but it's not too many that I know of. Like in total, it's probably like 20 to 30 colleges have like these direct med programs that you can apply to. But personally, I didn't apply to any, especially because I'm also applying, like I'm doing engineering, I'm interested in MD, and I like business. Like I don't, like there's such a likelihood that I could choose not to pursue an MD that I didn't think that made sense for me.
And being able to go to labs and research and do the TED Talk, you obviously needed some networking and connections. So how did you build your brand and platform?
Yeah, I think it probably started like with my like everything for me started with my research, and then like once people like saw I was doing this high level research at a younger age, they were like more interested in me and would give me these other opportunities. So for like my radio show, like I presented my work at Intel ISEF, which is like the national like science or international science fair competition. And then after that, like I came back home and I was like interviewed by the radio. So then after I was personally interviewed, then like had this connection at the station, and then I came back and proposed that I start my own show, and it kind of built from there. So I think like for me, it all just started with like the one thing that I like, excelled in, and then from there it would like branch out into like these other fields of opportunities, which is how I guess I built my brand. But I don't think I like went into it thinking like I'm gonna build a brand. Like it just kind of built from there naturally.
And then another question that I have for you is that which colleges did you apply to? And when you got some rejection ones, how did you feel? Pretty upset, and then you got Stanford's?
Yeah, that's actually funny. So like I applied to probably like 15 to 18 schools, which is definitely a lot more than necessary. Um and I actually got deferred by Stanford at first. So like the first like college decision that I got was from Stanford because I applied early. And I got deferred. So if you guys don't know what that means, it's like if you apply early, it's like them telling you that they don't have a decision yet, like they'll let you know in their next round. So I was like really like distraught when I got that because like Stanford was my dream school. Like I really wanted to go. So when I started off college applications, like all my friends were getting into the schools that they wanted, and like I got deferred. Like it doesn't mean rejected, but it like felt like rejection, right? So that was like the first decision I got. And that was before like applications were due. So I remember after that, I applied to like 8 more schools that were already on my list, and I was just like so upset and like I was like, oh, I don't like Stanford anymore. I need to find a new school. And like I applied to all these other places. And then I would get like decisions along the way because I applied to like so many. So like decisions would come out in like February and like January time. And then in March, like the last week of March is when like a lot like of the bigger schools release their decisions. So I remember like March 26th, like which is my birthday, like 10 schools released their decisions for me that I applied to, and then March 27th, Stanford released their thing. So at that point, I'd heard from every school except Stanford, and then on the last day, like the March 27th, they told me that I got in. So then I thought I was going to MIT at that point. I thought I was going to like other schools because I already had like moved on past Stanford, and then like the next day they told me I got in, and then like immediately I was like, oh yeah, I like Stanford, I'm gonna go. So for me, it was kind of a bit of a roller coaster because like I didn't get in, and then I got into all these other schools, and I literally like would buy other college T-shirts because I thought I was going there, and then I ended up like going back to Stanford. So it's just like it's such a like hectic process, I'd say. Like I don't think it's like a like you apply, you get in for everyone. Like it's just a lot of like back and forth. At least for me, like it was a lot of back and forth and like what school do I apply to, and then I didn't get into a school, and then I would add more to my list. So it's not like as straightforward as it may seem like from the outside until you get like to go through it yourself. But that's like the other thing, like you can't really prepare for a lot of it. Like you can't like from freshman year in high school be like I'm going to go to this school and do everything your whole life to get in, because like at the end of the day, like a lot can change. Like you can think you don't want to go somewhere, and then you'll end up like falling in love with it. So um yeah, I don't know, my process was like definitely really rocky, but um I don't know, that's like the other thing, like you just have to like go with it, not be too rigid um in your like mentality as you go through the college application process.
Do you know if Stanford differentiates based on nationality, like meaning if international students would be considered the same level as citizens?
I'm honestly not too sure. I know they really like international students because they're all on campus right now, and all the normal US kids are at home. So I don't know if that gives you like any indication. Like I don't think they really discriminate. They really like their international students. I think it's definitely a little bit harder to get in as an international because so many more people are applying for less spots. But I think their whole admissions team for international is different than their admissions team for the US. So I think you can go on like their application website and figure out more, but I don't know too much.
How do you identify colleges to build on your college list, and what do you look into a college for?
Yeah, I think for like my college list, like as I said, it like literally kept changing by the day. Like I remember I applied to one school like in my history class, like we had like 20 minutes to work on something, and I just applied to another college because I heard my friend like because my friends were applying, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a good school, I'll apply there too. So I don't think it's this thing that you have to like you're so stuck to it and you can't apply to schools outside of it. I think it's a good guideline to have like your end of junior year, senior year, to get a sense of like what schools you're interested in. Um, for me, I like the I guess criteria for which I was looking at schools were if they had kind of a good med school, So I could do like this high-level biology research in collaboration with a med school. And then my main interests were in engineering, healthcare, and entrepreneurship, which are like these like three big fields. And it seems like all schools kind of have like two out of the three of them, but no school really had all of them except for Stanford, that I was looking for, which was one of the reasons why it was my first choice. So like a lot of schools would have like really good engineering and business, but they wouldn't have a med school, or schools would have really good like healthcare, like a big med school and a lot of like a big business school, but they wouldn't have terrible engineering. So I never found like that match really for all three of my major interests at any school except Stanford. And I would find like other schools that were like somewhat like had the resources that I was looking for in a college, but um, like none of them really met that like vision like for me except Stanford.
And going back to your research, is there an application season for lab assistants or lab work, or is it year-round?
Yeah, lab work is constantly going on. And like I think maybe some colleges will have like designated programs to bring high schoolers in. But if you just are directly reaching out to professors, there's no application for that. Like that's just you reaching out, putting yourself like as like available to work for them. So I don't think there's like a really like a time or application for a lot of this stuff. It's just you on your own time going and making a connection with a professor that would like literally through a direct email. Like there's no really application involved most of the time.
And what was your first research topic?
I mean, if we're not counting the lima beans thing in ninth grade, I worked on a stem cell research project. So I was working to figure out like what chemicals, like in the extracellular matrix, you could like provide cells with that would allow these stem cells to turn into cartilage cells for arthritis. So arthritis is like a condition where the bones like will kind of grind against each other, and it causes a lot of pain for patients. So by being able to rebuild that cushion between your joints, whether it be like in your legs or your wrist, it kind of reduces that pain for patients. And you can do that by forcing these stem cells, which are these like wild card cells, to turn into cartilage cells. So that was kind of my first project, and that was like the first project I worked on in a lab. It was just growing cells in media in like their little like solution in petri dish, with all these other chemicals that I was trying to see like which chemical can force them to turn into these cartilage cells fastest, or for like with the highest percentage. And that was my first project.
And for your college application, what was the most impressive factor about it?
I'm not really sure, like from like an outside perspective, what like a college admissions officer would say. I think everything I did came back to research, so I don't think there was like one thing. I think it all like built up to be like, oh, this girl really likes science. So probably like something in that direction, but I don't think you could like go on my resume and say like this is what got her into this. Like I think it's kind of like the whole picture.
And how did you present your research at international conferences?
Yeah, that's another thing where it's like you build up step by step. So I started like presenting at my local ISEF fair, which is just like in the city. Then I would present like the regional fair. So that was like for me, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And then from there, I presented at like Intel ISEF, which was in Pittsburgh that year. And then from there, like I won like these awards that allowed me to go to other countries. And then like from there, I would find like other opportunities. So that type of thing is like you just build up and like you work with what you have. So if right now like you want to like present your research, like work at your local fair, because that's like how I started. Then you'll present at your regional science fair and regional competitions, and then like after that, hopefully you can present at like national or international ones if you just like keep working your way up.
And one person asked, like she has gotten to know that many people have been doing researches and attending competitions. So how do you get involved in these type of things? And do you have like a mentor guiding you? And is there
Yeah,
anything else? Yeah.
I think with like just like finding mentors, it's also about emailing them, and like once you get into a lab, just staying in contact. So I had like a mentor who worked at a college near me move to another college in like Wash U, St. Louis. So like still having that contact, even though he's like not even in my area anymore, still helps. Like I'm working for remote research for him now, even though I worked in his lab 2 years ago. So once you have a mentor and kind of sustaining contact, will always help you in the future.
And this is about school. Like you were pretty much productive all the time, and it seemed like you knew how to manage your time really well. So do you have any study tips?
Yeah, I think it's all about kind of staying organized. Personally, I'm not like a neat freak, like OCD, like perfect type person. Like I don't think my like the way I studied was super systematic. But I think if you still have everything organized, it like prevents you from making silly mistakes, missing assignments, and helps you with time management in general. So I always have like I just use like the Google or Apple Calendar on my phone and like have everything like always like planned, like when I'm gonna do what, like when I'm going to finish this homework assignment, when it's due, like when I have this meeting. So just keeping yourself organized is like honestly like the best study tip I have, because it can make a lot of work seem way less overwhelming if you divide it the right way.
And do Ivy Leagues care about your AP classes that aren't based toward what you want to do?
I think any college will care about your AP classes to some degree. Like every school is looking for you to take the highest level classes that you can. And I think like for me, I did the classes that I liked, which happened to be more in STEM. But I really like history too, so I would take like A push like AP US history or like AP European history. And I like that a lot too. So I think like I don't think it's a matter of like if they care or they don't care. I think with your classes, they just want to see that you're taking the highest level that you can in areas that you're interested in. It doesn't matter if it's like an IB or not an IB school. Like I think every college kind of just wants to see that you're pushing yourself.
Did your school environment have to do anything with how you grew as a person in STEM? Like if it was a really competitive one, you had to be taking a lot of classes?
Yeah, I'd say I really had a great high school experience. My school was really like not cutthroat at all. Like everyone was super collaborative all the time. And I went to a small school as is, so I don't think like we were just all really close in our school, and I don't think anyone was too like competitive or cutthroat. So I don't think that really shaped, I guess, like how I went about choosing classes or doing anything in high school. And I think even if you do like say go to a cutthroat school, just like focusing on yourself and doing the best you can, even though that environment may not be as conducive to that, is the best way you can go about it. Like just focus on yourself. If people are like being competitive or cutthroat around you, like your life is your own life. And I don't think like if you go to a really like competitive school, it should really affect the way you perform yourself. Like just focus on yourself and do the best you can.
And did in any way did social media influence how many internships you got?
I wouldn't say social media. I think like just being able to like Google a lot of like opportunities or find people's research online made it a bit easier. So I'd say like just having the connectivity to like find opportunities online was the most helpful. I don't think like going on Snapchat every day will help me find internships, but I think just being online and like having that connectivity to find like opportunities or go on lab websites was always helpful.
And this person says that, do you know of any jobs that are open to high schoolers and pay more than minimum wage?
Um, Not too sure. I know my friends all work at like restaurants and food places in the area and they pay above minimum wage, but I don't know about like research jobs. I know for me, like I'm doing this internship for the year and they're giving me like a research stipend. So you can try to find um places to work at over the summer where they can give you like a $1,000 to $2,000 like stipend for 2 or 3 months, which obviously isn't like the most money in the world, but um, yeah, I think like it's hard to get paid or compensated for research as a high school student because you don't have as much experience as like a undergrad yet. But yeah, I'm not sure about like jobs really. I guess it kind of depends, but yeah, I don't know. I think if you're just looking for a job, like just finding like restaurants and like working at stores, like that's just a good place to start from what my friends have told me.
do you say that there's a certain mentor that helped you a lot, that got you through this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd say probably like two of them. So I worked at Lehigh University, which is in my area, and the like two main lab people that like the professors that I worked with, I think were definitely pretty influential for me because they kind of gave me the chance to work in their lab and they took a chance on me because I didn't have that much experience at that point. So I think they like the two professors that like helped me initially get my start are probably like the most like impactful on me, I'd say. And then the one of them I still have contact with and I'm still working with.
And how do you learn more about computer science?
There's a lot of free resources online. Like honestly, like you can just go on YouTube and look at tutorials. Like once you just download the software, um, like just kind of getting started. There's a lot of like open source data that you can even practice online. So like I'd just say just start like searching around. Like I just use YouTube tutorials honestly a lot. But there's like full length courses and like all these websites that are available for learning programming in any language.
Okay, I think we can start wrapping it up. We've been a little bit over time. If anyone, has any questions for Rhea, you can email our account and we can kind of follow up and get you the answers that you want. In the chat, I'm posting links to how you can get involved with us and also how you can access our event recording. So if you want to access, so this is also, all these links are going to be sent in a follow-up email as well. But if you want to access the event recording, we ask that you please fill out a short feedback survey. And additionally, since you guys are all able to attend our event, we're offering attendees an opportunity to like bypass the leadership application and just schedule a session with our HR team to join our team and get a leadership position. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the chat. You can also check out our website and Instagram and our link tree. And someone is asking for Rhea, your LinkedIn. If you're comfortable sharing that, you can put that in the chat.
Yeah, I can just Google it real quick, I guess. 1 second. Okay, I'm not sure if